It shows 7 o'clock. Shall we call to order?
With that.
Roll call, please.
Chair Zwingli,
Here.
Vice Chair Silverford,
Here.
Diane Foster, here. Sean Garland,
Here.
Dave McCart,
Here.
Rich Miller,
Here.
Amy Miller-Jabay, here. Christian Burkest, absent. Chris West.
Here.
Approval of the minutes. I had one note, one thing that stood out to me on page 3 of 5, section C. At the 4th line down. It says that there was an article about this, and it explained that the article stated the bags were donated by the police advisory board. I think the article actually identified me in my capacity as being chairperson for the police advisory board, not that the bags were donated by the police advisory board. So that would be the only thing that stood out to me, and the comment that everyone was now included was more along the lines that you got associated with it by virtue of the way they identified me in the article. And that was the only change that I saw. Anyone else see anything? So with that-
With that one change, I move the minutes be approved.
Okay, I will make that correction.
We have a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. On to the business section. A, we have discussed options for PAB member replacement. And we've also discovered that we were supposed to elect a new chair and vice chair last month to be effective as of this month. So I have now received, as we all know, Mr. Burkest has not been able to join us for a while. And I now have an email from him resigning his position on the board. And I believe that from this point, we are supposed to decide whether to accept the resignation. And if we do accept it, then we need to notify the city council that we have a resignation in hand so that there can be a process to be followed to replace him on the board. So, is there a motion to accept his resignation?
So moved.
Have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And I believe the motion is carried, and I will send an email to the city council letting them know that there is now a vacancy on the board. Now, Mr. Pessimir is here, and just before the meeting, we took a look at the website and discovered that we were supposed to come up with a new chair and vice chair. Is that, you're supposed to do that at the beginning of the year? Is that my understanding? Is my understanding correct?
Yes, yeah, that's what the language says in January, so.
Okay, and other than that, there are no real guidelines on?
It's just, the only guideline there is, there should be a nomination process and a vote, so
Okay,
that's all I got.
so we can, in talking with Mr. Pessimir earlier, I mean, if we want to move the vice chair up and make the vice chair the chair for the current year and then choose a new vice chair, or if we want to choose a whole new slate, that's up to us. Anyone have any thoughts? No thoughts?
Can things stay the way they are?
Yeah. Sure.
They
It's our
could.
decision. Tom, there's nothing against things staying the way they are.
Absolutely not. Commonly happens.
I move that we proceed through the end of this calendar year with our current chair and vice chair.
I think you need to nominate.
Okay, I nominate that we continue with our current chair and vice chair for the remainder of the calendar year.
Is there a second?
I second that nomination.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried. agenda.
I ask a question about the replacement of Christopher Kest's position. Anytime other commissioners and boards that I've been on, anytime there's been an opening, there has been a process whereby applicants, it's posted, applicants can apply for the position. And in this case, the chief and the chairperson would interview the candidates. And then a person would be presented to the city council for their approval. Is that correct?
Yes, and the council liaison.
Okay.
And then the process that I'm familiar with is then that committee that has the interviews then provides those names and information and their choice to the mayor. And then the resolution is then forwarded from staff and the mayor to full city council.
So, and as my memory serves me, when we created this board and you placed the original members on the board, there was a specific effort made to grab certain certain members of the community, is that right? Someone from the younger generation, I'm sounding like the old man here. Is that something that we would also push in this direction for this? Or now that we've got a board that's been in place for a while, is it just kind of open?
So the current language in the ordinance does specify that an attempt will be made to seek representation, as you're referring to. So, operating under that language, that's what we would try to do. But we're not limited to that. We're bound to only choosing somebody from a particular one of those representations. I will point out that we are in the process, led by Tom, to clean up some of that language. And I can't recall as I'm sitting here if that, I think that language specific to the police advisory board is will be in the new proposed section. So the way it is now and the way it appears to be going forward, there will be that continued effort to seek representation from different segments of the community. So we will certainly attempt to do that, but we're not bound to do that because you can't control who applies and who's interested.
So to get that pool of candidates started, we simply notify city council and they generate the pool? How does this work?
Well, you'll notify council as you laid out, and then it'll be staff's responsibility then to post the opening and get the process going.
Okay. All right. Then I will go ahead and notify the guests.
I just wanted to make a comment. I, for one, would obviously like to see a member, a youth member, be a member of this, continue to be a member of this board, and I would like to advocate for looking for high school students. We have a library board that has a high school student representative, and that at times has been problematic because you'll get a really good one and then they graduate. But I think that an individual at the high school has its really unique perspective on what what's going on and interaction with the student resource officer. And so like the chief says, you can't control who applies, but I really like to advocate for staff for, maybe looking for a high schooler.
Members. Share the
I meant,
word.
to promote it as an opportunity for anybody who's interested in law enforcement or criminal justice or just wants to, learn about civic duties to apply. So, but again, we don't know who would apply, so.
Right, no, and I would certainly welcome those applications. So if anybody knows of anybody that's interested, please encourage them to apply. I think the mayor has indicated that she is looking to get the young people in our community more involved, and so I think that is in keeping with one of her goals. So I think it'd be great to have someone from high school. Quite frankly, we wanted to do that the first time, but it was just a matter of trying to get everything accomplished at once, and we probably didn't market that as well as we could have. We did end up with Christian, who certainly was only a couple of years out of high school and was able to provide that
Representation?
yeah. I can't think of the word.
Perspective?
Perspective, thank you. So yeah, we can work on that.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay. Next item on the agenda is recreational marijuana ballot discussion. I understand we have a guest speaker.
So I will introduce Michelle Miller, come on up, and she is with the, I could say it in lots of fun ways, she's our local marijuana expert, or whatever. But I won't say that.
That's a misnomer.
Yeah. Michelle's with planning department and has done an amazing job from my perspective on working, and you all are aware of that as well, because you have provided different levels of input at different points. But Michelle has done an amazing job at kind of trying to corral this and working with the planning commission and putting together some of the time, place, manner, and different things. So we had this on our topic, or on our agenda, and the time is now, and she was interested in coming and speaking with you folks, so it's all yours.
Well, thank you so much, Chief, for those kind words, and thank you for letting me come speak here this evening. I see some familiar faces of those that worked on the medical marijuana dispensary rules and regulations. Well, the Planning Commission was so appreciative of your efforts and your involvement in that process. They've asked me to request your involvement with that process for recreational marijuana facilities. And CU is playing an integral role in developing that code language as we move forward and participating hand in hand with the Planning Commission as they're developing those rules. So with that, my main purpose here tonight is to really invite each and every one of you to participate in a public work session that we're having with the Planning Commission. Some of you might have participated in that a year ago concerning dispensaries. It involves the community in sitting down at the table and hearing from them on really what their concerns are and their issues that they have concerning recreational marijuana facilities. The Planning Commission would like you to share a seat at the table really and help lead that discussion and share your insights from the public safety position and your involvement with that as well. And the date on that is March 10th. It's at 7 p.m. at City Hall. And I want to provide you an update on recreational marijuana facilities, and so that you're prepared as we begin this important discussion in the community. So tonight's presentation, I'm going to talk a bit, this is kind of a little awkward. We're going to talk a little bit about marijuana regulations and that timeline. There's been a lot of moving targets with the regulations that have been developed since the passage of Measure 91. We're going to talk a little bit about the Oregon Liquor Control Commission's recreational marijuana license types and that process that they've developed. And then give a recap of medical marijuana dispensary regulations and how we can maybe use some of those tools in the toolbox of the time, place, and manner as we develop rules for recreational marijuana facilities. And to talk about our timeline for developing local regulations on recreational marijuana facilities. You might recall or be aware that the City Council voted to place this issue on the ballot in November. So our timeline is to really develop regulations so that they're in place in the event that voters don't approve that ban on recreational marijuana facilities. So we know where the community stands on that issue in the event that the ban is not upheld in November. And then a little bit about the public work session and how we're engaging the community in this process. So our marijuana regulation timeline really began back in November of 2014 when the voters passed Measure 91, which legalized marijuana. In between that time and now, the Oregon Liquor Control Commission, along with the legislature, really tweaked that measure and developed rules and processes for developing the rules concerning these type of facilities. In May, kind of a parallel task, the City Council adopted medical marijuana dispensary regulations in 2015. So in the fall and September, the City Council voted to ban early sales of recreational marijuana at Sherwood medical marijuana dispensaries. The legislature had allowed local jurisdictions to kind of make that decision for themselves if they wanted to allow early sales of recreational marijuana in those dispensaries. And the city said, let's wait and see how it goes with the dispensaries first. In January of this year, the Oregon Liquor Control Commission must begin accepting license for facilities. So they're taking in those licenses now. And I believe, as of this morning, in Washington County, 59 applications for all the different licenses types have been applied for. But no actual licenses have been approved yet. It's still very early in the process. In January 5th and 19th, the City Council voted to place that ban on facilities and place that issue before the voters, along with a tax, which will also be considered at the same time of whether to tax marijuana facilities should the ban not be in place. So kind of a dual issue there. So our goal really is to have those safeguards in place of knowing where recreational marijuana facilities could be located in the event that ban is not approved. So here's a look at Measure 91 vote. It was, the no on Measure 91 was the winner, I guess, with 53%, but really it was a difference of 448 votes. So relatively close on what the decision was for that issue. And so with that, I think there's enough information to really make it before the voters in November again. So our option for recreational facilities in Sherwood is only that the voters can ban recreational marijuana facilities. We couldn't say we're in favor of one license type but not another. We can't make a ban. So we have to allow it at least in one of our local zones. But until the voters decide, there's a moratorium on recreational marijuana facilities until that November 5. So we do have some time to work out some good rules for that. So recreational marijuana licenses are really an industry. It's very different from medical marijuana dispensaries in that they have two different types of land use issues. There's the dispensary itself, and then there's the growers for medical marijuana dispensaries. Recreational marijuana is a real industry. It starts with producers and goes all the way to retail and laboratories and research. So there's 5 different license types for recreational marijuana. And the OLC has different rules concerning each one and different processes involved.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
What license type does the tax take place?
I believe the tax that the state is imposing, it is on all of the different types, but it might vary. I would have to get you more concrete numbers to know that for sure.
Definitely 1 through 4
Mhm.
from the state.
In talking with the policy analysis in Milwaukee that's administering some of these rules, they are starting with once the marijuana plant is going to survive, I guess, is a concrete plant, that they will issue that a number, and that is tracked all the way to the retail facilities. So they really want to take those gray areas and the unregulated marijuana off the market and closely regulate and tax all of the marijuana products involved.
So each plant is going to have a separate number?
Yes. The website is called Metric, and there's a good link to that, and you could read about it for hours. I'm not very technical, so I can skim a lot of it, but the gist of it is it really is set to track all aspects of the plant.
Can I ask a quick question? On the last slide, you talked about the moratorium until November. Does that mean a moratorium on accepting applications or just opening a retail storage?
So I'll get to this in a little bit, but our role that the OLC sees is that we would respond and be part of that process of getting a license approved through what's called a land use compatibility statement that we'd have to sign off on. So say you were interested in a retail site here in Sherwood. You came into the city and said, I'm located at 555 Southwest Pine Street. And we'd say, well, that's in our commercial zone and retail is allowed in that zone. So we could sign off on that. So until the voters decide, we are not allowed to sign any of those land use compatibility statements. So it kind of stops the process at the state level, and they're aware that Sherwood has a moratorium in place, that they won't be able to go through with that process.
Michelle, just a term that you may have heard that the state is using to go back to this idea of identifying plants. The term they're using is seed to sale tracking, and that really tells you exactly what it is. So individually, everyone from the time it is a seedling and produced as a plant all the way through until it is sold, the intent and the desire is to be able to track that.
So no out-of-state producers bringing in product.
That's the current status of the rule, is that it's all localized. But there is that before the legislature to modify and change that. They really want it to be an Oregon-grown operation, so to speak.
And I would imagine that if they ever got to that point, there would be some kind of an import or excise tax if it came from out of state. That would be my guess. But that's what they want to prevent.
And then
Is they want to prevent the influx of unidentified and what they're calling black market marijuana, and instead let the demand be fed completely by the retail, Oregon-only retail production.
And then we throw in tribal enterprises into the mix.
Well, I suppose if you want to really complicate things, yeah.
They're already, several
Yeah,
of them are already
yeah,
talking about
right.
it, so.
So that'll have to be figured out.
So there's the 5 different types, from producers or growing all the way to laboratory and research. So let's say instead of marijuana, it was someone in the industry of bubble gum, so it'd be making bubble gum, and where we would likely have locate that type of industry would be how that's compared. So the statewide rules concerning where these facilities could be located, for obvious reasons, not on federal property. They can't be at the same physical location as a liquor license holder. Also, they can't be at the same physical location as a dispensary, growing, or processing site that's registered with the OHA. And that's the final rule, not the temporary rule that allows to have those sales at this current time.
Even though they are allowing recreational sales at medicinal dispensaries.
Right. That's a temporary, I think, because the way that they're issuing licenses, they're starting, as the chief indicated, from seed to sale. They're starting with producers, so they're getting that up and running and issuing license kind of in the order that they're able to track that. So retail, they anticipate to be ready to in the fall is their goal. And they haven't issued any licenses yet for producers. There's a certain training that's going to be taking place in a few weeks for people that want to be a producer, and that'll be a requirement that they attend this workshop and training.
And you're speaking specifically about Washington County, correct? Or are you
For
speaking
the
about all
59.
Oregon?
This is the Oregon Liquor
All of
Control
Oregon.
statewide.
Okay.
So this one I found a little interesting. They can't be in areas zoned residential except producer exception. And I thought that was a little odd that there could be growing operations next door to you if that was the one exception. So I called the Milwaukee about that, and it can't be in a license holder's primary residence. So for example, in theory, you could see that someone could have a grow operation in their garage besides the personal use and be eligible to have a producer license in that. Now that really wouldn't fly in Sherwood because it'd be more like a home occupation and there'd be certain restrictions on that. I think that we have enough that wouldn't hold up here in Sherwood, but I just found that to be a real big loophole really, and maybe people weren't aware of that type of exception. For example, somebody might be able to purchase a house and not even live there and operate a grow operation.
Or rent,
which- Yeah,
if
so.
they're not living there.
Well, primary residence. The idea is that an inspector needs to be able to go to a producer, a license holder at any time and inspect and investigate to make sure that it's open, so they don't want to have that for primary residence. So I thought that was something that we really need to have close idea about and understand that. Not located within 1,000 feet of a school, and that only applies to retailers. So the other 4 license types could be within that buffer zone of a school.
Does that rule also apply to liquor stores, or is that unique for the marijuana retail shops?
I don't know if there are any rules concerning liquor stores in school. This is similar to the medical marijuana dispensary buffer that they have imposed for the Oregon Laboratory. So those are those 5 basic rules that they have. And a little bit about the process that I touched upon earlier. An applicant submits their application online to the OLCC, and they begin the investigation and satisfying the list of requirements, and they vary depending on the license holder. Then the next step would be to complete the local government review process, which is assigned land use compatibility statement that we would authorize. Yes, that where the applicant proposes to go is allowed in our jurisdiction. And then the application review is completed, there's inspections of the facility that they plan to open, and all of those T's are crossed, and that's at the time the fee is due and the license is issued.
So everything you guys see would be held up at that second until the.
That's correct. So you recall some of our, the rules that we established for medical marijuana dispensaries, and I have that map that we use to help guide what we did for medical marijuana. Do you recall some of the rules that we had established? We set we added a buffer 1,000 feet around parks. There's the existing rules around the school. And then we said that medical marijuana dispensaries could only be located in the general and light industrial zones. And so those are outlined in the, I guess it does look a little purple there. That maps. So those are some of the same tools in our toolbox that we can use as we determine rules surrounding recreational marijuana facilities. So now I'm going to talk a little bit about the timeline. So the land use process can be a little lengthy, and there's a lot of notice requirements that we have as we consider plan amendments to our development code. We'll hold a series of work sessions, and then we have that public work session on March 10th at 7 p.m. And during that time of March, we're proposing to have an online survey that will be used to help guide and get feedback on what the community considers important in determining the regulations, and that'll run from March 1st to the 31st. We'll take the feedback that we get from the joint work session, as well as the online survey and all other comments that might come in, and prepare some draft language during that time. We have some notice that needs to go out to the Department of State Lands when we do that before a public hearing, and that requires 35 days. So before you know it, with this timeline, we're looking at a city council hearing. Really the earliest that we could have it would be in July. So we really do have to, we don't have that much time as compared to when the vote comes in November. So with that, we'll have some community engagement, the facilitate meeting with the Planning Commission, our online survey. We're providing some information on the websites, and newsletters, and fact sheets as well. So with that, we'll take any questions that you might have.
A question maybe for Linda. So I know the council voted 5-2 to put it on the ballot for November. Is that a done deal? Is there paperwork that's sent to the state that says we want this on the ballot? Or is there a deadline where, say, the survey comes back, the online survey comes back, and large majority of the citizens here in Sherwood say, we don't want a ban. on marijuana sales. We disagree with what the council voted, you know, we don't want, is there a way that we pull it off the ballot in November, or is that a done deal?
Well, it's not a done deal in that it's not until November, so we haven't approved a ballot title or explanatory statement yet, which we still have to do, we still have to have a public hearing on that. And that'll be drafted by, you know, the city attorney. And then, we, in turn then notify the county that we wanna put it on the November ballot, and I think the deadline for that is, yeah, late August, first part of September. So, I mean, the vote happened, and so staff is moving forward with, you know, drafting the ballot title and the explanatory statement. Technically, what was approved is the ballot title and the explanatory statement, so, we just have to notify the county and file the appropriate paperwork and meet the deadline. And this is something that's allowed by state statute, not necessarily by our charter or just because we felt like it. So, if the survey came back and that was information, then, you know, the council would probably have a work session and you know, decide what to do then. So, I mean, there'll be a bunch of stuff on the November ballot, so.
One thing is, we might not really even ask that question, we have to talk about that a little bit, but our task really is to look at where the appropriate zones are for that, and we really don't want to mix up the issue of do we want it or not want it, but where would it go if we had that.
And this survey, is it going to be limited to Sherwood residents, or is there going to be a way to figure out who's responding?
We're going to be asking that it would be Sherwood residents, or members of the community, surrounding community of Sherwood, but it's challenging to kick people out with SurveyMonkey. We have IP addresses, can kind of see some duplication, but I think that's how you'd weigh the information that you have, that would come through. Well, maybe some people may not be in the city. We haven't really thought about whether to do a scientific study.
Michelle, the planning commission has another work session on April 12th. I recognize that you want us at the March 10th one. It'll be the same setup as with medical marijuana, the separate tables and so forth. Would you want us at the April 12th just to sit in there and give comment or whatever?
Most likely, that would be a good opportunity. I could either, a couple different ways we could go about it. I could give you the results separately in April of what the survey was and have that draft language. You could provide feedback perhaps at your meeting if you'd like, or if you'd like to attend that meeting and provide comments that way.
Okay.
So I think we have some options on the table. They really want you to be a full participant in this way in practice.
Just a quick follow-up. I checked briefly about the 1,000-foot rule with OLCC, but I couldn't find it.
Concerning
Whether a liquor store
store.
can be within 1,000 feet of the school, it would take a lot more digging.
Yeah, but that's an established rule, right? So regardless of, I'm just, I guess for comparison.
Sure, no, it's a good comparison. I wish I was able to find an answer.
But either way,
But,
that's on the books, so that's one of their regulations, and we need to abide by that, the 1,000 feet?
Well, the retail.
Yeah. So that's not something that we've got up for discussion, saying that we
Not
Don't.
with regard to retail.
So what the planning commission is formulating is time, place, and any other restrictions that may be placed on the 4 or 5 different licenses, correct? For council to make a decision.
Right, so the way any code amendment goes before the planning commission, there's draft language, they make a recommendation to the city council, and then the city council reviews that recommendation and approves it for via ordinance.
Would it be possible to get a copy of those slides sent around?
Sure.
Can we do that?
If you want to email to me,
That's true.
There'll also be an attachment to the minutes, right? Or not?
oh, yes, of course, I will.
Any other questions or comments?
Did we get the handouts passed out?
I think Angie did that.
Yep, looks like it. Okay.
Thank you.
And I hope to see you all at the meeting on March
March 10th.
10th.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thanks, Michelle.
Thank you.
Item 4C, Community Policing and Problem Solving Course Update and Summary. So Bob and I attended training along with Chief and Captain Daniel regarding community policing and problem solving. And it was for 2 days last week, and Bob's going to give us a summary.
Well, it was last Wednesday and Thursday, and the four of us went there. We arrived a little late, and so we were given our own private table. All of the other tables in the facility were really a mixture of individuals, both police staff, community staff, and so forth, that were kind of mixed. And I think having our own private table, if you will, was a nice advantage. The host agency was the Grand Ronde Tribal Police, and it was held at the community center up there in Grand Ronde. There was no cost to attend, so that was nice, and the training was provided by the Western Oregon University, and the curriculum was provided by the Western Community Policing Institute. The gentleman who was a trainer, I thought was terrific. He obviously had done this many, many times before, and it was the presentation, the class went very smoothly. What I'm going to do, to just give you an idea of what we went through, was to break the 2 days up into 4 parts. Remember, part of the title of this is community policing and problem solving. And it's important to remember those two sections, or two distinctions, and the 2 days were split really into 4 distinct sections. First is identifying problems. Each community or each police staff had to identify problems, determine the root causes of those problems, do a complete analysis of the problem, and develop a plan on how to attack it. I'm not going to go into great depth on each one of these, but I want you to get a feel for what we went through, what we experienced up there. And after I'm finished, I'm sure that the chief or lawyer, I'd be happy to answer any questions. The first morning was spent getting to know others in the class, and since we were there as a team, we all knew each other, but we were asked to get to know each other by the technique was to tell something about yourself that nobody else knows about. Nobody else knows about. So we learned, the 4 of us learned a little something about each one of us. And what do we have, Chief? We have a dolphin trainer.
Yeah, that's right, we have a dolphin trainer, a champion free throw shooter, and then I don't remember the other 2, you can move on.
Okay. The instructor discussed leadership and its application to community policing, and working through that through emotional intelligence. They talked a little bit about emotional intelligence, and Guiding Norman has written a terrific book about this. That some of you may be familiar with, but as part of this, we were then led into a leadership challenge, which asks 4 things. Am I doing the right thing, at the right time, in the right way, and for the right reason? 4 good questions. And at that point, we were each given a challenge coin. I forgot mine this evening, I meant to bring it, but I don't have it. But if you've been in the military, any of you may know what a challenge coin is. We'll tell you later after I'm finished if you don't really want it. Now, if a leader can answer yes to all 4 of these components of the leadership challenge, then the quality of their discussions will most likely be bettered in both their functions as a manager and as a leader. As a manager and as a leader. Lori has hers, it's not even out of the package yet. I can tell you, I haven't tossed it on any table. Okay. We were then told individually to list the issues, challenges, and/or problems in our individual communities. So each one of us independently came up with our thoughts about that for Sherwood, and then we got our heads together and discussed it as a group of 4. And we came up with traffic safety as the problem that we were going to focus on for the rest of the class, day and a half to remain. In the afternoon, we launched into a historical overview of community policing, including a pretty fascinating case study of a serious gang-related crime problem that they were having in Springfield, Massachusetts. And this actually was profiled on 60 Minutes. And as part of the training, the instructor played that tape and what happened. The state police played a really significant role in it. But it was really their involvement with the community that helped to solve it. It'll never be completely solved, but they helped to bring it down to a level where it was workable. We then began working on the traffic safety problem we had selected for our community. And we kept bringing up the community involvement, and it was discussed that, and I wrote a quote of what was up there, if you're not getting the community involved, you're wasting your time. You're wasting your time. We then finished the first day by working on the Harvey story. And I have prepared a copy of the Harvey story for each one of you so you'll understand what we're working on. And basically, this is about a young 15-year-old boy named Harvey who meets a tragic death. And there have been a number of people in his life that have been instrumental in how he ended up being what he had developed into at the age of 15. And there's essentially 8 people that were in this story, and we were asked individually to decide to rank in order who you think is more responsible for Harvey's tragic death. We did it individually, and then we talked about it and came up with a consensus for our table. And then on a big board, we listed all of the different tables and how they came up. Pretty fascinating, and I actually took this case home that evening, and I discussed it with my wife, gave it to her, and then we talked about what she had come up with and what I come up with and so forth. So I think you'll all find this interesting and have a copy.
How similar were the results?
I would say that they were individually made as,
Well, I mean, did you do it all individually and then compile the results, right?
Yes.
Was there a standout or?
I don't think so. I think I'd say it was probably, the 4 of us, probably 2 to 2 on how we, on the spectrum of where we were. But then we combined it into one. Had to be a little give and take. I think I gave everything away, but somebody in the group has to give a little bit. So the second day started off with everyone giving their definition of trust. The word trust, what does it mean? And we were asked to come up with 5 different definitions for the word trust. And they were across the board. So the word respect came out. The word family came out. The word love came out. It all depends on a person's, I think, experience, culturally come from, that type of thing. So went around every table, and one of the nice things about it, all of the things, the exercises that we did, it wasn't just one table reporting out what they did, but they went around to each individual table to see what they all came up with. So that was great. We talked about partnership and how important partnerships are in daily life and making things work. Those of you that are still working know how important it is in the workplace to have partnerships with different groups, different people, and so forth. I certainly knew that when I was still working. Small problem situations were brought up during the day, and one came up when discussing the problem-solving triangle, which I'm not going to go into here, and it pertained to the Lincoln Memorial. And they were having a problem back in Washington DC with the Lincoln Memorial because birds were dumping on it all the time. And the problem was, how do you get the birds out of there? And of course, you think, well, we can shoot the birds. We've got thousands of people there all the time, and that probably isn't a good solution. So, more discussion showed that in addition to the birds, there were spiders. And in addition to the spiders, there were insects. And there also happen to be lights that are showing that. What was attracting the birds? It attracted the insects, which in turn attracted the spiders, which in turn attracted the birds. But it showed how everything goes together. And when you look at a problem, you have to look at all different aspects. They drummed home that any time that you're trying to solve a problem, look at the root. Keep asking why. Keep asking why, because every time you ask why, it will broaden everything you're looking at and lead you in different directions. So that was good. Now remember, we're working on traffic safety, and that afternoon, we began to get down to the root causes of what our problems are with traffic safety. And everybody, I just want to tell you one little thing. I thought the guy from Bend, Oregon, they had a pretty interesting problem. At, I think it was 2:30 a.m., the bars let out, and there's one area of a couple blocks where there are 3 bars that everybody likes to go to, particularly in the summertime, spring break, those types of things, times during the year. It's a real problem because people pour into these bars at 2:30 a.m., they get into fights, vomiting, people getting sick, all that type of thing. How do they cut down on that? But we have another little case study, and many of you have been involved in, been through training classes and the type of thing where you have to solve a problem where there's been a crash or an accident. I remember several classes I went through while I was still working, maybe with an airplane crash, and you're given like 25 different items. You can only take maybe 5. Which 5 do you take? That type of thing. This particular one was about the USS Consensus. That's the ship. And there are 10 people on the USS Consensus, and the ship is sinking, and you have a life raft that only can carry 6. And we were told, there were 10 people, we were told a little bit about each one of the 10, and each of us individually then had to decide which of the 6 get to go in the life raft. And it was pretty interesting what we came up with. And then, of course, then we all jump aboard and we get a consensus. And again, just like the Harvey story, that was the type of deal. So it's teaching us how to work together. They then launched into the kind of the middle part of the second afternoon, the 3 E's. And the 3 E's are engineering, education, and enforcement. And we can go into a lot more about that. But we talked about that, and the last part of the second day then concluded with the development of our action plan regarding what we're going to do about traffic safety. And truth be told, Harvard never really finished that. We need to work on more, right? Anyway, that is a summary of the 2 days, what we went through, what we learned. I thought it was a very interesting class, well-designed, important topics were covered. It was fun, and certainly the cases that we worked on were a lot of fun. Good problem-solving techniques and emphasizing the importance of getting the community involved in solving problems. So, with that, any questions? Anything that Chief you'd like to add, or Roy?
I thought you did a great job summarizing that.
Yeah, and just not to add to that, but to add in general, we have the ability to bring Brian, the gentleman's name is Brian Kaufman, he's the director of the Western Regional Community Policing Institute, which is based in Monmouth. And so he said he'd be more than happy to come out. We're gonna probably have him come do some stuff with our staff, a small little deal. And he and I talked about, and one of the things that the group discussed was community engagement and community involvement, obviously specifically related to community policing. A lot of the things that you all have been working on and trying to get folks engaged. And he indicated that they actually have some information that they can talk about that. So I just throw that out, and if there's interest in this group to, you know, have him come and, you know, whether it be on a regular meeting night or a special meeting night, and obviously you open it up to the public to have him talk about the value of, you know, what community policing means from a community perspective, because it doesn't happen without community. I mean, that's the reality. So he can talk about that and talk about the value of engagement and involvement, and maybe some strategies to work on that. So throw that out, and if you're interested in that, let me know, and it's certainly something we can do. It's free. This is all funded by our federal government, but it's all a part of the Office of Community-Oriented Policing Services, the COPS office. And they've established these community policing institutes throughout the nation regionally, and we're very fortunate to have one in Oregon, because a lot of states don't have them. So let me know, and we can certainly do that.
Would there be any interest in that? Yes?
Yes. This guy's very good, I think it'd be worthwhile.
Chief, I think we're interested.
Okay, thank you.
I have a few more copies of the Harvey Square thing, if you out there would stop by it and would like to take a look at it, have one for the finish.
You'll enjoy that.
Next item, counselor news.
How much time do I have? 2.5 minutes, okay. Hey, we get 4 minutes at council. So just a couple of informational things. Our finance director left us, and so Joe has a, maybe Tom, but I can't remember the name off the top of my head, but a local firm, or, you know, Portland area firm, a lot of municipal accounting and budgeting experience have come in, and going to be working with staff, and then have started the recruitment for a new finance director, so that's ongoing. And staff, I think, had their first budget meeting. I don't know if it was the first meeting, but
We had a kickoff meeting.
yeah, the kickoff meeting this
yesterday,
week.
so.
So that's, train has left the station. On Tuesday night, we had a couple of work sessions in council. One of them was some proposed charter revisions that council is looking at putting on a November ballot. We also approved the Southwest Shore Master plan, which is a conceptual plan for what in the future will be the area, essentially north of Edie, south of Edie, and west of Elbert. That someday, and parts off of Edie that will someday, probably not within 10 years, but come into the city of Sherwood. And it was an extremely well done community outreach project where they had staff going out from Shell's department, talking to landowners. They had a community advisory committee, which was residents and landowners. They had a technical advisory committee, which was staff and ODOT and TVFNR and Washington County, and they came up with basically Plan A and Plan B. Neither one of them is one or a higher or lower priority, but basically what that does is when you have a plan, you can work the plan, and when you be proactive, if a vendor comes knocking and says, well, we're thinking about expanding the urban growth frontier, we can go, look, we already know where we want to grow. We've already got engineering estimates, we've already spoken to landowners, and so Tuesday night we adopted the conceptual plan, emphasis on the word conceptual, but a number of members of the community advisory committee came and really spoke to, complimented staff, complimented the consultants who came in, and thought it was just, maybe one of the best civic experiences they'd ever had. So kudos to staff and to consultants who really listened. Apparently the architect, who has a very long last name, but instead of just reading about Sherwood, he actually came out and talked to people and really looked at the landscape and understood what's important to Sherwood. a gentleman came up and said, you know, two of the main reasons that that I think people move to Sherwood is one, that we love and preserve the environment around us. We have 3 watersheds in our community. And then secondly, that we have walkable neighborhoods where you can enjoy, you know, your neighborhood, and not have to get a car and drive somewhere to go do that. So I'm very proud of staff for that. And the previous council meeting, we had 2 new ordinances. Well, we updated the noise ordinance. I don't know if everybody's up to date on Skanska and the issue with the residential picketing. Are you all nodding?
Yes.
Okay. You're not familiar, Dave? So Skanska is a Swedish construction firm. They built Edie Ridge and Lower Ridge and the extension at the high school. And they have, of course, offices all over the world. They're currently building at the University of Washington I think it's part of the medical school or research institute, where they're building an animal testing laboratory. And they just happen to be the one who won the contract. Well, there's an animal rights organization called No New Animal Labs that has been targeting Skanska executives all over the United States. We happen to have a family whose the dad is a Skanska executive, and he lives over off Sunset. And what they've done is they've listed the residents' addresses on this nonewanimalabs.com website, and then people go and protest at their home. And it started in April, and they were coming about once a month. In Beaverton, they go there every week. And they come late at night, and they scream and they yell, and at times they've had a bullhorn, and it was very disruptive. And then they took the summer off, and then they returned in the fall, and the family worked with staff and the police department to improve the noise ordinance, because it really wasn't a tool. You know, when you talk about law enforcement, you know, it's only as good as the tool is. And officers would respond and notify them that they were, you know, violating the noise ordinance, and they needed to stop, or they would be cited, and then they stop, and then they go home. But, you know, their idea is not to, you know, their idea was to cause disruption, and they're trying to get Skanska not to do this. But the gentleman who lives on Sunset has nothing to do with that facility at University of Washington. Just happens to work for the same company. So we amended and improved, I guess, unless you feel otherwise, the noise ordinance, and then we also drafted Oregon's first residential targeted picketing ordinance. So we can't ban picketing, obviously, but we can time, place, and manner, kind of like Michelle was talking about with regard to marijuana. So we have the first residential picketing ordinance in Oregon. We're not sure it'll, you know, there's a large chance it could be challenged. The Boguses, who is the family, they have a civil temporary restraining order against animal labs, and that is going to be updated, or going to be back in court in Washington County next week on, I don't know if it's 22nd or 23rd, but what we wanted to do is preserve people's right to come home to, you know, what is their home, and to not, you know, what should be peace and quiet, and not fear that, you know, people would be standing out screaming and yelling and calling them murderers, and so that was the best way to address it. And staff actually is working, or was working, with the city of Beaverton, who's in the same boat as we are.
I think today it was posted online in the Portland Business Journal that they are going to follow suit.
Beaverton? Yeah. So,
You guys turned that around really quick too, so that was impressive, getting that in place and rewritten. And
yes,
very
yes.
impressive.
Yeah, so I think, and again, kudos to staff. We had a window, I think, there that conveniently worked out for us, because the picketers had a big event in New York, and so it wouldn't have changed anything that we did, I don't think, but now we have a much better tool for the police officers not only for this event, for other events where, you know, maybe the noise ordinance didn't apply or there was some gray area, so.
So what were the changes to the rule,
Which role?
the new ordinance? What has been tightened up?
Brand new,
Go ahead.
so the existing noise ordinance, language contained,
You mean previous?
the previous ordinance contained language that was, Josh Soper City Attorney felt was extremely vague and unenforceable. For example, it had the word annoying. What's an extremely,
Broad.
broad, multi-defining term. So what they did is he put language in there that utilized the reasonable person standard. So any person that objects to the noise can then testify to its annoyance based on their reasonableness as a resident or whatever. So I think that was the main change to that ordinance. If I'm correct. Can't think of anything else.
There was some additional language about, you know, any noise that you can hear from inside your home, you know, and basically just it clarified,
Could you add bullhorns or something like that in
They
there?
don't-
They were already there.
bullhorns are not allowed at
Okay.
any point in time unless you have a variance. And even the variance is very specific, but, one of the difficult things is, one of Jeff's officers or our officers has a body cam, and we watch one of the cams, and he shows up, and it's a group of people. Some of these people wear hoods, they wear masks, and, you know, it's not an environment that anybody would walk into and just say, hey, knock it off. And, you know, we're 4 square miles, we only have 2 officers per shift at nighttime, and sometimes they could be on a DUI or be on the other side of town, and it took some time, so they would, you know, go up and the challenge, you know, having never faced anything like this in Sherwood ever before, was that the new animal labs, they know exactly where the gray area is, because one of their head leaders is an attorney. So when they get arrested, she defends them. And so I think that certain communities are targeted because they know that the ordinance is, you know, hard to enforce. And a noise ordinance is a municipal crime, not a crime, meaning, you know, that we would cite them and they have to go to Washington County. So
It's not a state statute.
state statute. So we're hoping that, you know, that maybe the message has been gotten, and you know, they're protesting. Sconza has a building downtown. They're protesting at that building, and it has nothing to do with, you know, the animal lab.
Is the civil
Restraining order.
that's enforceable by the police as well, right? Is that more?
Yeah, you know, it would be like if they came tonight. Basically, what would happen is the attorney who represents the Bogguses would then notify Washington County that they had violated their restraining order, and then there'd be a hearing, and then there'd be
So there
some
wouldn't be something like
consequence.
you guys would come in and sweep them off the
Nope.
sidewalk? and-
No, but they could be called to testify to say, yes, they were here, and so on February 22nd, I guess we'll find out if that's gonna stay in place or what's gonna happen. So, one of the challenges thinking about the picketing ordinance, though, is that they could, instead of targeting a house, they could just walk around and yell and spout and, you know, picket. And so, currently the ordinance says, 300 feet? No. None?
No, we don't have a picketing ordinance.
No, the restraining order. They can't come within 300 feet?
Oh, I don't, yeah.
Yeah, something like that. So they could, you know, stand 300 feet away from the Bogguses and jump and yell and so we'll see what happens, but they're on the books, and of course the one nice thing about our own laws is that we can improve them. If they're not working the way they can, or, you know, change them if they're, if there's an unintended consequence. So hopefully they won't come back, but we don't know. The only other thing we talked about Tuesday night was, we're going to continue to try to find, a business to, who's interested in leasing space at the Art Center, and that's now an additional, plate on Tom's tray, I guess, for lack of a better term. And so, in the past, when we've had, opportunities like this, a lot of word of mouth has been how people have found out about things that are happening in Sherwood, so if you know of anybody who might be interested or is looking for retail space, then you would have them call Tom.
Or office as well, so,
Pardon?
office potentially too.
Oh, yeah, office too. So, if you don't know, there's technically 3 1,000 square foot spaces that could be developed at the Art Center, which then in turn would help, raise some revenue that cover the cost of having the Art Center open. So, that's it. Does anybody have any questions for me?
Okay. Staff reports?
Thank you. I'm gonna have Tom come up, and he's here and has been waiting patiently for this chance to give us an update on, or give you an update on the staffing study. So I thought, rather than me working my way through it, I'd let you hear from the gentleman that has overseen the process. So, Tom, thanks for being here.
Thank you, and thank you for having me. It's been good to be here. See how very well organized you guys are. So, really, I'm just gonna talk about process tonight. There's no major announcements here. So we've kind of settled on, I think, after talking to Matrix and some others, how this process is going to move forward, and also give you a timeline as well. So I know everybody's very excited about getting this study and opening it up and reading through it, finding out what the recommendations are and everything else. But that's going to have to wait a little bit. So right now, Matrix is still working on what they're calling the draft study. They're very close to having that finished. We should have that Monday or Tuesday of next week is my expectations. That draft study is really an internal study only, so that will be distributed to myself, the city manager, to Jeff, and probably the 2 captains. And really the intent there is to go through that and make sure that it is complete, it makes sense, there's not typos, that the tables are over there and everything else. So it's not trying to influence their recommendations, but it is trying to make sure that the study is actually accurate and makes sense, and that there weren't things that were missed during the process that can be improved. That will then turn into a final draft, and that was what will be released to council and to the public. We have scheduled a meeting on March 15th, 2-hour work session starting from 5 to 7 to kind of have Craig Matthews from Matrix here and anybody else from Matrix that needs to be here.
I'm sorry. The 15th is a Monday. Is it on a Monday or is it Tuesday?
It's a Tuesday, I'm pretty
It's
sure.
Tuesday.
I thought it was the 16th. Let me double check.
Okay, double check. that.
No, it's
I'm 90% sure, because the first is a Tuesday as well.
100% sure unless my calendar was wrong.
So really, it'll be a work session, but we're probably going to do it in the main council chamber just because we know there's going to be a lot of people from the community that want to be there. And it's 2 hours, so that gives, plenty of time for Greg to do a presentation and then really to take comments and answer questions. So we want that to be a very interactive process from, not only the council side, but also from the community side as well, to make sure that the information kind of gets put out there in a logical and consistent way so that everybody can get the information and ask questions and kind of hear it all essentially at the same time.
The community will get to ask questions as well.
I'm pretty sure, I haven't made that decision yet, but it's a 2-hour work session. I can't imagine that it would be
We don't
different.
normally take comments from.
We don't normally, but, let me look into that and see, but.
Maybe we should be calling it an open house.
Yeah, maybe. So we'll look into that and see. It was kind of my understanding that the community could ask questions. But typically, Linda's right, a typical work session is really just communication with council and discussion there. So we'll see, but I think we certainly want to, even if we don't take questions, you know, that being, very openly, we'll take questions, you know, from anybody, so really, it's moving along, certainly by the 15th, it will be out, for everyone to see. Part of the delay is just simply Greg's, Matthew is going on vacation, and he won't be back, for the meeting on the 1st. So we pushed it out, which is good, because, you know, the draft has got delayed, and so he won't even be back to get our comments until after the 1st of March anyway, so we'll get him some time to be able to finish it up. So really, that's it. I mean, that's not very exciting, I know. You know, that's kind of what the box looks like. I mean, we'll open the box and see, but we're just not there yet.
So I know that one of Mr. Matthews' big things was data. He wanted to have more data before he could come up with some conclusions and suggestions. So what is your sense of how comfortable he is with the amount of data that he got from community members?
I think very comfortable, and that's one of the reasons that, you know, he's taking more time is because we ended up having about 382 or 387, something like that, responses to the survey, on the online survey, which was great. You know, that was more than we expected, and was really good information and data. And he also, you know, we had 35 people or 40 people show up for the community session as well, and got great feedback there. So between those two, we're well over 400, you know, people that, you know, were able to give input, and that's going to definitely be important. And I know that that's actually, you know, driving some of the recommendations I think that he's considering is that community feedback. And so it's, from his perspective, it actually worked out really well, and it doesn't always work out for what community, but he feels like for sure we got exactly what we needed. So.
Any other questions? No? Thank you very much.
And I was gonna give you an update on one more thing, if I may.
Please.
So just for your interest, I pulled some social media numbers. Some of you are more into this than others, so I thought I'd share kind of how our social media was going. So in no particular order, I'll start with our Facebook page. Our page has 2161 likes. That was as of, I think, yesterday or the day before when I read this. So just a few little insights are for the 28 days, January 21 through February 17th, so that tells you when I ran, it was on the 17th. Our largest audience is women 35 to 44. Most commonly used device to access our page is a mobile device of some sort. Our reach during that period was just over 19,500 people, and we had post engagement of just under 14,000. And we got 90 page likes during that period. That was a particularly successful period. Not all 28, snapshots of 28 days or months looked that way, but all of our numbers were up for that period. Our reach was up 154%. Our post engagement was up 355%. Our likes were up 67%. So actions on the page were up. So it was, I just decided to pull it on that period, and it ended up being a really good period. Okay, on our Twitter page, this is a 28-day summary about the same period. We had 20 tweets in that month, which is not a high number at all, but it was up 300% for us. Tweet impressions was at just under 11,000, which was also up over 300%. Our profile received, so that's our main page, it's got all our information, received just over 1,100 visits, which was up 63%. we were mentioned 12 times in that period, which was a 300% increase. And we are, at that point, we were at 1,077 followers, which was up 64 from the previous time. So, and to kind of explain why that was such a big week was we had one tweet in particular that was referencing the Seaside shooting, and so that obviously attracted a lot of attention. So that's Twitter. And then the app. I had actually not looked at this for a while, and when I pulled the numbers down, I was just like, oh wow, this is so cool. I had no idea. So as of the 16th, we were at 1,505 downloads on our app, which is an amazing number. Like I said, I had no idea. If you're really geeky, you'll want to know that 55% of those are on Android and 43% are on Apple. And it flipped. We were predominantly Apple the last time I was watching this, and the Android folks have taken over. So anyway. So another interesting number on the app is the app open count. So how many times was the app actually open? Not that somebody's got it downloaded, but they went in and interacted with it. During its inception on May 5th of last year and February 16th, 2024 times it has been opened. So interesting number, but not a great number. And there, I kind of did some random months. There were some periods in there where the app was never touched. and that's because it was new and because we were still learning to use it. But the last month, to give you an indication, the app open count, January 16, February 16 of this year, was 684. So clearly, folks are starting to get dialed in. I'm sure there's been a lot of the downloads have come recently. So
It seems like too that there's a lot more notifications
Yes.
on general information. So then when you see the app and you see the little notification, then you click on it to open it. And
There you go.
that's happening a lot more in the last month on your stats.
What kind of interaction are you getting recently on the app? I know there's a section where you can contact the police department and report something. I mean, is that,
we
are you
probably
seeing much
get
from that?
a couple a month.
Yeah.
We don't get a lot.
Okay.
Yeah. And we're still getting ones that we shouldn't get, like there's a suspicious vehicle parked at such and such. But, you know, we get that on an email, it does us no good. So we're, you know, constant education. Hey, call the non-emergency number. That's something that we want to get an officer on. But, so yeah, if we got one of those a week.
But that's not, I guess, your intent for the app really anyway. It's more of a
Well,
informational app.
yeah, I would say our main intent is to be able to push information out. But I would love for it to be a two-way street. But there's really only a couple things. People either going to send us a thank you, which you know that button is there, or they're going to say, hey, be aware of this. And that's fine too. So my guess as a fairly novice and low-level smartphone user is that most of the time it seems to me like those kinds of things are for gleaning information. It seems like most people, unless you're really into and you do everything on this, you know, that's just my sense. And that's what our usage has shown at this point anyway. So, any questions about any of that?
The one thing that's intrigued me, and there wasn't really an opportunity to mention it at the little staffing study thing, but the little neighborhood that I live in our homeowners group Facebook page is an unbelievable neighborhood policing venue. And we're over there off of Sunset near Archer Glen with the green space that used to have all sorts of problems. And our neighborhood Facebook page is really turned into, I'd say 60% of the posts have to do with, you know, suspicious vehicle, parked here, people went in the woods, we called the police, or somebody's going around knocking on doors, anybody else see it and stuff like that. And I just wondered if, Chief, are other homeowner groups active like that? I just know ours are, and I'm pretty intrigued by it.
I don't know, and the reason I don't know is because we're probably not dialed into that, right? So, I wanna know, find that page for your neighborhood, so we can get connected, and mutually like, so that we can see some of those posts and, but the reality is, both at a city level and even a department level, because the police department and the library have really kind of been doing the social media longer than the other departments, which are now working really hard to try to get caught up, and I suspect will very quickly, but even though, we've been at this for, I don't know, a year and a half, it's still brand new to us, and so, I mean, just today, we were putting some stuff out on the app and realizing, oh, yeah, look, Ty mentioned something, I'm like, oh, gosh, that's right, I never thought, of course you can do that, but I wouldn't, So, I mean, it's still a constant learning process. So, we're not connected maybe with that HOA or neighborhood group page. I don't know that we're connected with the Woodhaven HOA group page or any other HOA group pages that might be out there, and we should be, so that's something that we need to try to.
Okay.
So I would certainly ask the public to, shoot us a comment on something or an email or what, something, even or a like. I mean, if, we're gonna see it, we're gonna get a notification if, for lack of a better term, the West neighborhood page gives us a like, then I'm gonna go, oh, there we go, and I'm gonna go and like.
Arbor Glen.
Arbor Glen, there you go. So I would certainly encourage folks to do that.
Any further staff report?
No.
Citizen comments? Any citizen comments tonight?
One quick one, regardless of what happens with the vote in Sherwood with marijuana, it doesn't mean marijuana won't be in Sherwood. It's here today as a recreational drug. It's gonna be here then. All it's gonna really happen is that taxing will not be available to the city if they don't do recreational marijuana outlets. And you will open it up to what's called a black market, which is here today, selling to the children. And along with marijuana, they're also selling synthetic opiates, heroin. So the more you legalize it, the less available the black market is in your community. Just wanted to say that.
Oh, I see John Gisman.
Well, I don't know how long you're gonna vote in November, but I know that, I heard it tonight, it's gonna be closely, if it does pass, it will be a closely regulated substance. You're gonna have a safeguard of location, the little map where in the little corner, that is the only area where it's gonna be allowed if it passes. And, so you have a safeguard of location. It's a complex and confusing subject. I went to Salem, this really interested me 10 days ago and listened to one of the committees talking on this retail marijuana. They were talking about the out-of-state growers coming in and just passed yesterday. So, but anyway, it was a very, very interesting subject. And there, I think, is confused as, we probably are on the subject. But, it'll be interesting, in November, 450 vote difference. Maybe, if you as a committee go out and, voice your concerns or voice your support, that will get more people out there. I think it needs to be really, hammered home, both the pros and the cons. That's all.
Chief?
Mr. Grevel reminded me that this would be a good time to probably remind all of you that as official members of an official board and commission, you are public officials and governed by those ethics laws. So you cannot take a position on any ballot measure, no matter what it is. You can present factual information about it if asked, but you cannot take a position. And I know that's not what you was talking about or suggesting, but just a good reminder that as members of the advisory board, you cannot suggest somebody should vote one way or the other, because that'd be a violation of the election laws, so.
So are you saying that they can't write, say, a position on the ballot?
I mean, like,
Not as a member of the
letter to
police
editor.
advisory board, no, only
They
as
could
an
as an
individual.
individual.
Right. They are considered a public official, the same as Tom and I are, and, well, actually, I'll leave you out of it because you're elected and I don't know that one as well, but, so, yeah, you can speak as an individual, but you can in no way, have any representation, use any city resources or anything to accomplish those statements.
But like a letter to the editor or anything like that, or speaking at city council, acceptable, not acceptable?
So if you're speaking in Sean Carolyn, that's perfectly fine. You still have your individual rights, but if you're representing the police advisory board, you cannot.
I would remind everyone though, of what happened in the article when I was presenting the medical bags. I was promptly identified as the chairperson of the police advisory board. So just be aware
Through
that,
no fault of your own.
because I was certain I said foundation.
Naturally.
So just be aware that, you are, by virtue of being on this board, you are being associated with the board. Any further comments?
I actually had a question based on Tony's kind of comments in there that maybe Michelle, the chief, can answer. I know that when we were talking about the recreational dispensaries, there were strict guidelines in place for security measures, cameras, surveillance, all that. Is that also in place for retail? Has that been established?
You mean when you're talking about the medical dispensaries?
Sorry, the medical dispensaries, yes, they were required to have certain cameras and 24-hour surveillance. Is that also for retail?
Yeah, there's a lot of OARs that I haven't really gone into too much detail, but one of the components is the surveillance
Sure.
and the security measures. And if you look on if you're interested, the webpage that we have on the recreational marijuana facilities will link to that OAR, and you can take a look at those till your heart's content.
It is my understanding at a very basic level that there are more regulations and more oversight built into the recreational system than was built into the medicinal system. So you have to remember that the medicinal program is governed by the Oregon Health Authority, and the recreational program, as of today, is governed by the Oregon Liquor Control Commission. So there's going to be a lot of similarities in what some of those requirements and guidelines are, but the system, the way it was built, has far more oversight than the recreational system does than the medical system does.
Yes, sir.
Just one comment. I'm not gonna buy, sell, or indulge in any way in, recreational marijuana. You can throw a few seeds over mine, see if they grow, but, I have no interest in it, other than I think, people should have a right to participate in recreational marijuana.
But I think our task here isn't necessarily going to be whether we support the sales or not. It's just restricted to the
Right.
regulations on where they're time, place, and
Exactly.
So
Yep, you'll be asked to give input on that very thing. Correct. You have been asked.
Any other comments? Yes?
Michelle, what is the current status of the medicinal dispensary?
They have received land use approval. They haven't opened yet. They are working through the system development charges, and Washington County has some transportation issues with their access on Alton Sherwood Road, so they're working through that issue. They also have a landscape business that's pre-existing there as well.
So it's going to continue to operate at the same time?
Yes.
Oh.
So she purchased the building, which used to be a residence, and then it became a landscape business. It had several iterations, but It'll have the office and then the landscape business will be in the back. And so I haven't really heard lately when she plans to open, but there was some work done in January to finalize that. She has a facility down in Newburgh, I know, as well, and she's invited people to go take a look at this dispensary when it opens. So I can pass that information along when I receive it to Angie and let you know when that's gonna be, like she's gonna have an open house. Give you an idea of what they look like.
But there's nothing on our side as far as permitting goes that's preventing her from opening.
I'm not sure if she's paid her fees, all the
Right.
fees for the city.
Thank you.
This came in later. Are all the police departments informed about the rollouts of all these different dispensaries, time-wise? Because I think the concern I would have is that while we're working on deciding what we're going to do in Sherwood, in King City, they're 3 months ahead of us. People from Sherwood cross the city line to go to King City to get their product, and they come back here. How is our police department going to be handling that? Or if they go down to Newburgh and Yamhill County, which is a different county, how are we going to handle it? And I wonder, is there an expectation that various facilities are required, or the municipalities with which those facilities are located are required to inform the other city police departments?
I don't think that they have to. Their license holders would be published statewide, and I don't know what information the chief has available to them. I mean, that's public record, probably where they're located. But people can have recreational marijuana in the city. It doesn't.
So regardless of the
ban.
November ballot.
Yeah.
Okay, got it, okay, so.
We still go to King City.
You don't have to report it, you're sure.
To answer your question, no, we're not notified, there's no system in place, there's really no need to have a system in place, but there isn't. And I guess that's an important distinction to make, is that it's recreational, man, I just cannot talk tonight. Recreational marijuana is legal in Sherwood right now. It became illegal with here at the same time it did everywhere else. The only thing that's yet to be determined is whether the voters will decide, if the ballot measure goes forward, the voters will be given an opportunity to reverse that. But until then,
No.
No.
We don't reverse
I'm
it.
sorry. The voters will be given an opportunity to whether to allow it to be sold in Sherwood, which right now it cannot be, on the
Recreational.
retail, right, on the retail side. But that will never change. The state law, there is not an opt-out in the state law for recreational marijuana. No community can choose to, well, for the sake of our discussion, no community in our area can choose to say, we're going to vote that it's not legal here. That is not an option around here. And I say around here because I think it is an option in some small populated counties that voted against it. The legislature allowed an opt-out provision for, like I said, counties with very low population numbers that voted against recreational marijuana, but that doesn't apply anywhere around here, so.
Any further comments or questions? Chief, was there something about an emergency preparedness class coming up?
Yes, there is, on March 8th, I think is the date, does that sound right? Yes. March 8th, we will have our first of several preparedness classes. These are community preparedness classes. They're designed for community members to come in. My understanding is the response so far has been pretty good. It'll be about an hour and a half, 2-hour class. It'll cover the basics about making sure that you and your family are prepared. And as I said, this will be a series. We will repeat this. Our intention is to record it, so it'll be available by video, and then we will repeat it. And then we will also potentially look at you know, a next level class depending on what the interest is and what they're able to cover and what they're not able to cover. We also are looking to put together some snapshot works that we will put on our cable channel. By a snapshot video, I'm talking about 5 to 10 minutes with just little snippets of, hey, did you know you can do this, and here's how easy it is to do this. So just getting that information out, giving opportunities for the community to come in and make sure they're prepared. It's a goal of councils and it's a goal of ours, and so we're gonna get started. Got some great volunteers that have come alongside us, and so, in fact, I think that morning, it's a Tuesday, correct? So that morning, I'm glad Andy's here, because I tried to correct the date on the council. That morning, our presenter will be at, I don't know if it's confirmed yet, but we're hoping we'll be at the chamber to talk to those folks about business continuity and preparedness from that angle. So, yeah, so thank you for remembering that. That's pretty excited to get that.
Is the format of that a presenter to an audience, or is
Yes.
it interactive?
Yeah, I'm sure there's going to be some interactivity, but yeah, basically it's going to be presenting information. Here's how you do it. Everybody that comes is going to actually leave with a handful of stuff. Now, not a 72-hour kit, but with forms that will help them go through the process to get prepared and have the checklists and everything they need. So, from that perspective, to really plan and get it going.
So March 8th, what time?
I have 7 o'clock.
And there's some flyers on the back table too.
Oh, okay.
What's the capacity of this room? If you were to have
Throw out a number.
standing
think
room
it's
only
100.
turnout?
Yeah, it's more than
It's on the
I
back
think
wall.
we get in here.
Oh.
100.
I've heard a lot of people talking about it.
Yeah,
Me too.
yeah, it's right back there.
Yeah. So, hey, what a great problem to have. If we have to,
Yeah.
if we have to turn people away at the front door, then we'll quickly schedule the next
There you
round.
go.
Yeah.
Letting them know that this is not.
And this is gonna happen again anyway. This is not gonna be, it's not dependent upon the crowd. Our plan at this point is to do one a quarter, and if we have to repeat the same one, so be it. If we move on to other topics, then great. But
The Center for the Arts has a big room.
maybe we'll have to get there. But the beauty of coming here is folks get to walk into the EOC, right? And so at some point, I don't know what our presenters have planned for that, but at some point, we could very easily give them, 10 to 15 minutes about how this works and how this room transforms and how people like Neil walk in and start opening cabinets and boom, and all of a sudden there's radios everywhere and we can communicate to lots of people. Tom and Michelle and I have and Angie have certainly experienced that. So we may have the opportunity at some point that would be the beauty of having them here.
I might mention then, Chief, since you commented on that, it's a little bit in the future, but on June 7th, there's going to be a major earthquake. And in fact, there's going to be a statewide drill. I'm assuming the EOC is going to be active at that point.
The city of
And
Sherwood will be
it might be
participating.
something that either council and or the committee might want to observe. Now, it is during a weekday, it's on a Tuesday, and it's going to be 8 a.m. to 5.
Now I have to invite him.
Well, if you wouldn't, I would have mentioned it to him anyway.
Yeah, Cascadia. Thank you, Neil. Yeah, that's a huge statewide exercise we will be participating in. It's not very often we get to know ahead when a big earthquake's coming. So, yeah, that's really neat.
Well, I have to give credit where it's due. Mr. Silverberg is the one who remembered about the emergency preparedness class, so.
It's the same night as a outreach meeting for the school district as well, so it's a busy night in Sherwood, so.
Any further questions or comments? Then with nothing further, this meeting should be adjourned. Thank you, Ms. Miller and Ms. Casimir for coming and sharing.